Microtrending.
Welcome back. I'm Gabrielle, and you are listening to Microtrending, the podcast for anything that is having a moment, for better or for worse. Happy Leo season. I am not a Leo, so this doesn't mean anything to me personally, but I think it's just one of those times of the year where things feel a little bit more fun, a little bit brighter. I don't know. Shout out to all the Leos. Their birthdays are happening now or coming up. The partyful invitations are flowing. I appreciate their commitment to a party. I am a Capricorn, which is usually a surprise to no one. But I do have other things going on in my chart, mind you. Just not a lot of fire energy, except for a Sagittarius Mars in the third house, which means I will fight you with my words. And if I'm about to lose you, please know that this is not an astrology episode or an astrology podcast. Astrology is just something that occupies a large folder in my brain. I don't know how it got there. I actually do know how it got there, but it's there. And it is actually somewhat relevant to what I do want to talk about today, including the Coldplay Cheaters, which is old news at this point. I'm sure you saw him on the Jumbotron, but astrology is one of those things too that is connected when it comes to judgment of others and the fear of being perceived, judged, labeled, etc. Because as much as people love to yap about their own zodiac signs and then also say stuff like all Virgo men are trash, there are as many, if not more, people who take offense to any sort of zodiac hot take or generalization or even joke as space racism or as like a true judgment on their character. As if someone were saying something horrific about someone's religion, for example. And as someone, as I mentioned, that has more astrology knowledge than is useful or necessary up here, I actually do have beef with both sides of this equation. To be honest, it is usually using insufficient knowledge for evil, because you have one side saying, I hate all Geminis, when sun signs, aka that like month period that you were born in, if we want to get fucking real, astrology wise, not that important in the grand scheme of things. Pull up your full chart, okay? Being a Gemini doesn't actually mean very much at all. And then you have people on the other side, the people born mid-May to mid-June, the ones taking offense, who were taking a statement like all Geminis are trash, literally, and saying this is the problem with astrology, period. And there is sometimes a sprinkling of misogyny in there too, with astrology being relegated to the female sphere for some reason. Anyway, my point is there is idiocy on both sides here. Now, if you want to talk shit on certain placements, that's something. That's informed, okay? Hating a moon sign is professional. Meet me there and we can talk. There's maybe more justification there because the moon sign is like the inner core of someone, how they deal with their emotions. You can have a guy who is a people-pleasing la-di-da Libra, everybody's best friend, and he might have a diabolically what about me Leo moon, making him perhaps a bit more challenging as a romantic partner. Maybe not, but it could happen. Or you could have someone with a self-victimizing Cancer moon. Or an everyone hates me, the world is out to get me Scorpio moon. Or Virgo moon. Or they can have a Gemini moon, like myself, and be a terror to have a conversation with. Too many thoughts. Yapadelica. What I'm really trying to say here is that we are all wonderful as well as terrible in our own ways, astrologically speaking and not. And that is what makes us human, and that can be beautiful. But is it cancelable? Can we exist as flawed individuals, not just on the internet, but walking through our daily lives without the threat of being dragged into the town square for a public flogging, without being recorded? That is a very rough summary of what I want to talk about today, because I feel like surveillance is kind of the new normal. But I want to be very clear before we get started, and I will probably mention this again, that there is a level of surveillance that I do think is actually necessary and we need more of, and that is specifically filming cops and ICE agents and those who are actually a harm to the public. That's not the type of surveillance that I have beef with or that I think we should question specifically, but just want to throw that out there. I do think we should be turning cameras back on those folks specifically. But there is kind of a new existence that we're in where we have performative males, the performative male archetype. We have cheaters caught not only in 4K, but by fucking Chris Martin. And it just seems like there's nowhere to hide, for better or for worse. So we'll get into that in a second here. But before we get started, for real, I'm just quickly here. If you've been listening or are a first-time listener, go ahead and like, follow, and share. It means the world to me. And I love you, I promise, no matter what your birth chart says. Probably. We are all God's children.
Microtrending.
Here's what I'm thinking. Every now and then, there comes an abundant natural resource in the culture to be used for good or for evil until it's passé and neutralized enough to hit the racks of TJ Maxx. That's what happens. That's when you're chopped. You are minced. You are mirepoix. In the 2010s, we had swag, for example, bubbling up from the earth, men looking like Betty Spaghetti, every single ankle deprived of oxygen, a believer in every home, and perhaps a custom grill here and there. Today in 2025, it is feeling like that resource is surveillance or attention. We've gone from swag to surveillance, which, unlike swag, is kind of a paralyzing place to be. And this isn't a new resource. We've had phone cameras for such a long time at this point. But there is, along with surveillance, this thirst for accountability and like for hunting and gathering receipts. You can suit up in your prospecting best and go panning for pitchforks. It's Eureka out here. And like I mentioned before, there is a way to use this natural resource for good, to be holding police and other bad actors, like truly evil people, accountable. But across the board, like 100%, Not everyone is pure of heart when it comes to calling people out or in piling on something. And because there's just so much of this energy, like I said, this thirst for accountability, it is like suffocating online discourse pretty often, at least in like comment sections. And so it becomes harder and harder, I think, for us to like actually determine who actually like quite literally deserves jail and what we might be better off even scrolling past or ignoring on the opposite side of the spectrum. And I'm not saying that the Coldplay cheaters are there. I think they probably deserved some of what came their way, but that is not over here. And if you're listening, I'm simply gesturing with my hands. These are not people who deserve jail time. And I do not condone cheating, but I think that we're showing up in terms of like trying to hold people accountable with like the same amount of energy sometimes that it becomes hard, as I mentioned, to like really get real about what is the bad thing. It's just funny to see how we as a society are so thirsty to see lesser figures beg for forgiveness.
Microtrending.
There is more that I want to talk about than just the Coldplay cheaters, but it feels like a pretty good place to start. I'm not going to explain the situation. There is 1,001 articles and videos about it. Your parents and coworkers probably know the same amount. But I think the most recent fallout from this is that the HR professional, the female partner in this cheating scenario, she has resigned. A second resignation has hit the Jumbotron. And previously, the bad guy, Mr. CEO, former CEO of Astronomer, their company, was forced to resign. So there have already been some corporate come to Jesus moments for them. And of course, with that CEO's resignation, as you can imagine, as you might have seen, there was a public statement, an apology, and there were some random typos in it, which I think was maybe to make it seem not like AI, but it's possible that a bot touched it. You know, a clanker had its hand in there, but maybe not. And I always find it incredibly a cringe inducing experience to read apologies, to listen to apologies when you feel like the other person might not be fully remorseful. And maybe this guy was, but my favorite part, second favorite part, was that he apologized to all of the people that he wronged in a list. And I just feel like having your wife and kids listed in the same sentence as the astronomer team is kind of a bad look. Like, I wouldn't feel better sharing single line space there personally. But my very favorite part is the very end when he shoehorns in the following. As a friend once sang, lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you. That was his mic drop moment. What in the Humpty Dumpty fuck is that Coldplay lyric doing there? I honestly feel like the real punishment is being that corny publicly. Twice. You done goofed twice, at least. And I'm not a Coldplay fan. Let's just get that out of the way. I never have been. I think The Scientist is a beautiful song. We'll put that over here. Um, but there's really nothing else for me there, if I'm being real. I have more active distaste, I feel like, for Maroon 5, but those two bands occupy like the same space in my brain. Parentheses derogatory. And before you're like, let people like what they like, I simply do not care if you are a huge Coldplay fan and this cheating scandal disappointed you in any way. At the end of the day, those lyrics in that apology statement are just a really hard read. Chris Martin literally called you out in the like recorded evidence that we have. He literally called out that you might be having an affair and you are quoting the man. This may not be just a simple cheating scenario, because why is there a third? And why is he British? Anyway, I do not condone cheating. Let me be very clear. This is an anti-cheating space, but we're so used to seeing recordings of strangers, not celebrities, but just randoms in public, that it didn't at first dawn to me when I saw the Jumbotron footage that, oh, of course, somebody had to elect to film what was happening and then take the second step of uploading to share with the internet at large. And if there was an intermediary step of debating, like, if I do this, what's gonna happen? I don't know if that girl who posted it went through kind of the like moral back and forth there, because there is a little bit of damned if you do, damned if you don't in this situation. But there is indeed a third person involved here, and that is the poster. She is very brave for doing that, if you think about it. But it's also just so normal now for that to happen. You could be on the Jumbotron, like it just scans over to you, spotlights on you, and you could be picking your nose or have your hand down your pants in either direction. And somebody would probably upload that moment. And who knows what Chris Martin would have said. But regardless, that moment probably would have made its way to the internet. Would you have lost your job? Depends on your job. But there's always that risk. This woman who uploaded it was apparently like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That was her mantra, I guess, in uploading this. And I guess in general, I don't disagree with that statement, but I think because we're so comfortable filming strangers, we don't really consider the humanity of the other people in this situation. And these are two people who have obviously done something wrong, but I just bring this up more generally because there are videos that people post and share of recording like unhoused people acting erratically, or people, there was like a video of somebody having like a mental breakdown in a Victoria's Secret like a couple years ago, and she was being like a horrible customer, but it was very clear that there's something also mentally wrong with this individual. And I think for like a viral moment, we might go to that place first of like, ooh, this is going to get views and attention, and I'm lighting a match to something here. Having that be top of mind versus like what could potentially happen to that individual after this gets picked up by fucking Good Morning America, you know? And when it comes to a cheating situation, like the Coldplay couple. You know, the only evidence we had was just how they were behaving on camera, and it was pretty damning evidence. But if you're recording that and then sharing it, theoretically, you are driven by either a sense of justice and like really truly wanting to hold somebody accountable for behaving badly, or you have that thirst for what's going to break the internet, what is going to be a viral moment. And it is unfortunate that that second mindset exists. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. Because I think if you're posting that out of the goodness of your heart and like you want to catch a cheater, I don't find that problematic in the same way. But I just really don't feel like 100% of netizens are sharing shit out of the goodness of their hearts, you know? And I want to be clear, also super, super clear, that this is not at all related to the argument that people bring up regarding people bringing like sexual assault to light. When misguided men and their apologists say shit like, oh, that woman is lying, or they're just bringing this up for attention. Like, why are they sharing these receipts now? Because fuck those people. Disrespectfully. Those are like the worst types of people. But it just, based on the response to the Coldplay Cheaters and the amount of coverage that it got, it just feels to me that we love stirring the pot, number one. We love a scandal, and we love being able to hold that up to our own experience, even as I like, hey, super successful people cheat on each other too, like their lives aren't perfect. Or just the schadenfreude of it all, the Jerry Springer Maury show of it all. The appetite that we have for stuff like that is one of the things that keeps social media afloat. It's not a place to connect with friends and family. Like, that's part of it. But people love being able to look at strangers. People to this day love knowing all the dirt on celebrities, de moi, crazy days and nights, etc., the blind items. But now there's like this other layer of like knowing strangers' business. Like, look how these random C-suite people fucked up their relationships. That feels newer and it feels ickier. Like, I think it sucks. I don't have respect for those strangers on the Jumbotron. But when I really think about it, and like if I like look more and more at that photo of them, it's obviously uncomfortable, it's cringe, but like I'm not personally entertained by it. The funny part to me is that it was a Coldplay show, and that has nothing to do with them personally. I think the situation as a whole, there are some funny elements, but I'm not really getting anything rewarding or truly entertaining out of their philandering. You know, many, many years ago, I actually don't know if this is still on, but it's like an early childhood memory to me. There was America's Funniest Home Videos. Okay, I would watch this with my dad. And back in those days, you'd have that same CEO fella, you know, maybe filmed careening from a trampoline in his yard onto somebody else's roof, crash landing there by accident. And we would all laugh and say, what a loser. That guy whose name and occupation we do not know, he should probably stay off the trampoline. And I hope he's not trampolining across the fence to sleep with his neighbor's wife. But I don't know. I hope he has a wonderful rest of his life, that he doesn't have to go to the hospital. And either way, I hope he has a great insurance policy. That is the sort of schadenfreude content, the look at this idiot content of strangers that we used to consume. And we would all have like these like silly laughs about it. And that content absolutely does still exist. Again, I don't know if that show is still on or not, but like people were posting this to YouTube early on. There's still that sort of shit on TikTok as well, but things have just gotten more and more personal. I just feel like I have mixed feelings about it from just like a personal safety standpoint, especially as a woman. Anyway, at the end of the day, ultimately, these are people who in corporate power who are behaving badly, which should not be a surprise to anyone. But my thoughts on all of this are that both cheating and the Panopticon are bad. Maybe throw Coldplay in there as well. And arena ticket prices. These are all very different evils of varying levels, but they are all, uniquely terrible in their own ways.
Microtrending.
I hope that makes sense. It's not defensible behavior, to be very clear. It's just always funny to see the like abundance of coverage that a story like that gets, the disgust that people have for it. I think it's just because it's, relatable, but like maybe higher stakes than on the big screen. But the reality is that as long as people have their phones in their hands, things are going to get recorded. And like I mentioned before, thank God for filming the police and police brutality. That is using that abundant natural resource of surveillance for good, the thirst for accountability for good. As much as there is a curse, there is a blessing in this case that we can do that and share it publicly. It is an amazing thing that we can create these primary sources, these firsthand accounts of the actually horrific shit that is happening on a daily basis. Having that proof. And I think AI getting in the mix is going to make all of this a little worse because people can look at real video evidence of police brutality and say this was digitally altered. There's that side of the AI debate to consider as well. But all in all, that is using surveillance, turning the cameras back on those motherfuckers for good. And it's definitely a reason why they want TikTok out of our hands. And I think people were like understanding of that when the like TikTok ban stuff was happening. Like there's a reason why, in terms of information sharing, that they don't want us having that access. I just wish that the multiple recent videos that I saw of police beating on young Black men for no reason. I know that this happens every day across this country, but like those videos pop up and there are new stories all the time. I wish that those videos specifically got the like same amount of attention and justice served that they deserve. Because if I'm being super honest, when I like think about all this stuff compared to the like CEO cheating scandal, which I don't know why I would compare them, but if we're talking about like things recorded and shared for the public, a boring CEO cheating with an equally milquetoast coworker is maybe the like 10th most scandalous plotline of an HBO series. I feel bad for their families, okay? But I'm more incensed If I were looking at their histories, I would be more incensed by money being pumped into AI and AI adjacent companies. We have Palantir and other surveillance enabling evils afoot to, I think, have a little more heat for than the Coldplay Cheaters. But we can take a step back from the ledge here. Let's take a step back from the like really heavy shit for a second. Because it's not all like super high stakes when we're considering this surveillance state. Our new reality, it's not always as high stakes or consequential. But when I think about the surveillance state and our like new normal of just being both online and in person, it's just something that is obviously going on in the background all around. And this is important, okay? It's not always the threat of being literally recorded. That's a real fear and threat that exists, but it's not always about that. It is the threat of being perceived and being judged, like the astrology stuff. And whether that judgment is publicly shared or not, the threat is still there. And I think it's really coloring how we show up. Again, not only online, but in public. And I would argue that most of this is for worse. When we talk about things trending for better or for worse, this is mostly for worse. Okay, we're becoming more and more bankrupt when it comes to authenticity. We are losing recipes. Authentic nachos. How do we make them? At the risk of sounding like a broken record about pop music, we're not going to go too far down that rabbit hole. Previous episodes that kind of go a little bit more into like the Addison Rae of it all and other pop girlies and what's going on there, and other videos that posted about the same topics. But I have seen very recently a few videos of people talking about how Benson Boone specifically has been a revelation for them in terms of this issue. Like they're picking up on something not being quite right there. Like that boy ain't right. Like he looks the part of an alt guy in some way. There's some facial hair, there's some show pony outfits. He's singing from the depths of his loins on stage. He's giving it his all in some ways. He's flipping around. But kind of like, honestly, how we have become accustomed to sussing out images being AI generated or not. Our AI slop radar, looking out for sloppers. We're able to see Benson's shtick and detect something performative beyond the literal performance of him on stage. Like there's just no substance. There's nothing in between the slices of bread. Maybe some cheese. To me, if Benson Boone were an inanimate object, and some would argue that he already is, but if he were actually an inanimate object, he would be one of those old-fashioned horsey rides that you put the quarter in for it to buck you around for a few minutes. I did see one the other day, and I was like, Benson Boone, what are you doing here? You are a lot smaller in person. The energy was just the same to me. Not a real horse, but small. And an incredible simulation. But Benson Boone is obviously not the only offender. A lot of the performative males that fit into this archetype that we've named now are that way, I think, because of the Panopticon. Because they know that they are being not only watched but judged on a pretty like hyper specific list of criteria in a new way. It's really like a collab between the male loneliness epidemic and the Panopticon. And I do think that the latter informs the former in a way, but men have picked up on the fact that we are not fucking with red pill incel types. Or at least most of us aren't. And so they're overcorrecting by following some formula that includes drinking matcha, carrying tote bags, listening to Claro specifically, or Biba Doobie, and other girl music, reading light feminist literature in public, getting caught reading is one of the big things, and just basically having visible, wearable signifiers of, hey, I'm safe as a man and I will satisfy you sexually despite the mustache, which is probably a lie, but that is the performative aspect of it. I've put all of these things on. Why don't you want me now? And some of them are genuinely turning over a new leaf. Like, I don't want to say that like all men who engage in these behaviors and buy these things and listen to these artists are a performative male. But the reason we're calling it performative is because these men are following what seems like a recipe or a script. Like, they're not fucking thinking for themselves. They're beigifying themselves to all be the same guy. And so on our end, if you can imagine, we can't tell what's genuine and what's a trap. And a trap as a woman dating is often a lot more dangerous, let me just say, than the other way around. In the end, it's really just male pick-me behavior, and it is not so widespread that like all guys are doing this and all men are complicit in this bullshit. It's just like a phenomenon that I feel like is informed by surveillance and the threat of judgment. And these guys have always existed spiritually. Many of them are or were English majors. And as a former English major, I have kind of always had the ick for them a little bit. And I do feel conflicted because I, perhaps problematically, have always had a preference for men who are in touch with their emotions. The sad boys, okay? But I would much prefer a sad boy with his own taste than an ex-finance bro who has just learned that his sperm count is in the toilet and that his options are thinning. And so they have turned to Claro and mustache.
Microtrending.
I don't know. I don't think that we're going to have like a real solution until authenticity is hot again. But I don't really see authenticity coming back in a major way when the surveillance state has us in a chokehold, because it instills a fear of being your authentic self, right? And so maybe we just have to kill that fear inside ourselves. There's so many videos about this, about like killing the cringe, right? Just like getting over that. And I don't know if that's fixable. So I guess we'll see what happens. But authenticity has always been the sexiest trait to have, I think. And perhaps the most admirable, taking it out of relationship land. And I don't want to gender this whole thing too much, but I do think that women in general are more, I think we're more acutely aware of being watched, being perceived, being judged societally, obviously, by men in many ways, and by other women. We do this to ourselves. And the pressure is usually coming from some other place, but we are also guilty of this. And it is a safety mechanism to have that like awareness, that like paranoia, of like being perceived. Like I totally understand that, especially when it comes to protecting ourselves from men with bad intentions, unfortunately. But the surveillance state for women online specifically is kind of like the most like basic day-to-day version of it is just like making sure that we're keeping up with trends, which is kind of sad. But it's one of the reasons why I like enjoy making fun of the trend cycle, is because of just how silly and like prescriptive everything is and how exhausting that is to keep up with. But you're watching out for yourself and you're watching out for others, keeping up with influencers and their lives, sussing out the imaginary competition that you have with other women, comparing features, figuring out how to get or approximate those features with procedures or products. Where can I buy those products? How did X celebrity lose all of that weight? Where can I get that? And none of this is new. I obviously there were other websites and like tabloids before that where we would keep up in the same way and observe others. But it is endlessly more shoppable now, which is very diabolical. And it is also feeding the body optimization era that we're in. It's like there being security cameras on at all times. It is a store that is open and operating 24/7 when you pull up your For You page. So for women, the surveillance state is perhaps more competitive. It's more surveillance of like minute details. And it is more detrimental in that way. Because again, it's not just like surveilling the opposite gender, it's surveilling everyone all the time. But either way, as women, we're just more used to this. I feel like it doesn't make it right, but like it feels familiar, sadly, in a way. But it feels like it might be a newer phenomenon for men who famously love accountability, especially demanded by women. How dare we? So I guess on that note, it was not a surprise to me that that tea app, I don't know if you saw it, but I was not surprised by the response that it got from men online. Like, all the men were not happy about this app existing. And I don't know if this app is still up there or not. I never downloaded it for a few reasons, and I'm very relieved that I didn't for one reason. But if you missed it, it's basically an app that was or is the equivalent of those Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook pages, which exist, Okay, those are an option for you still. But it's where women could allegedly safely share information about men. I'm guessing like whether they've dated them or not. I guess it wouldn't matter either way. And there was a data breach that revealed the like photos and driver's license and location information of these female users, because of course these app developers did not have women's actual safety top of mind in creating this shit. They had all this information stored in a public place online. Like none of this was encrypted. And so I guess just overall, this is an example of like the worst of both worlds. I do think that there should be a place for, in a way for women to like safely share information about predators and men that are dangerous to date. I think we can all be in agreement on that. Like, that's actually doing a public service. And in an ideal world, that is the information that we're sharing out of the goodness of our hearts. But in those Facebook groups, which again are still out there, you have people sharing stuff like he's bald, FYI, like he's hat fishing, or he ghosted me, or he didn't ask me enough questions on our date, and his dick looked like ET. And as fun as it can be to like get that off your chest, like I 100% understand wanting to share that information. That is the level of intel and semi-public shaming that I think is making dating and just gendered interactions in general more antisocial and weird. Like all of this is stuff I might share with like my immediate friend group, but unless it's something that's more serious, I just don't really see the value in knowing this information ahead of time. And knowing that some guy has a gross bathroom or is a bad tipper. It's a heads up that, like, in theory is nice to know. But if I'm going on a date with this person, I am going to have the same experience and make a judgment for myself. And that judgment is probably going to be the same as yours. And again, this is not about the like deal breaking hazardous stuff like this guy is spreading STIs. Like there is a category of stuff that I do think we should be able to share safely. But there's all this other stuff that is really, I feel like, not helping us. The things that are just icks or red flags. I just think this is an example of how we've become allergic to discomfort in our like optimization hashtag goals. And it's just making dating in 2025 really fucking weird. In addition to all the like podcasts and think pieces about like dating rules and how you're doing everything wrong, and it's just breeding a lot of like mistrust when there is again a class of stuff that is actually really dangerous and should be called out. And the rest is just like learning to figure out as a dater, as somebody in a relationship, what you're willing to put up with and what you're looking for in a partner. You should be able to decide, especially as you're first getting into dating, like have those experiences and learn what you dislike. So you can then figure out what you do like in the partner that you do want eventually. Anyway, this is not a dating podcast. I find dating content to be really exhausting because it's so personal. I think there is some good dating advice out there in the podcast universe, but I don't think that the messengers are always safe, reliable, qualified. So if you're looking for dating advice, it's definitely not coming from here. But if you're looking elsewhere, proceed with caution. And definitely proceed with caution on any app that is asking you for your driver's license or selfies to verify that you're a woman. Like, that's super fucked up. And I hope if you're listening to this that you did not upload your information to the T app, because that's on them. But oh my God, horrible.
Microtrending.
Okay, as promised, back to the Coldplay cheating fiasco for just a second. I did ask on my stories earlier this week if you had to get caught cheating at a concert. Because if you are someone who does that in a relationship, you're gonna get found out. Someone's gonna pick up their phone eventually. So just be mindful. But let's say you're someone who goes to a lot of concerts. If you had to choose one to be found out at, Jumbotron style, what would it be? First of all, I'm going to be reading some of them from my phone here. First of all, I just have to laugh that nobody said Coldplay. Like, no one was like, actually, I support their cheating at a Coldplay concert. I would choose Coldplay too. Not a single one of y'all chose Coldplay. And I had quite a few responses. So, as always, overwhelmed by the love and support by way of responses. So let's get into some of them. If you had to get caught cheating, Earth, Wind, and Fire. That I feel like would, first of all, huge fan. That I think would depend in my mind on the age of the cheaters. If you are a young person getting caught cheating at an Earth, Wind, and Fire concert, I don't know if that's more or less cool than being like someone who actually grew up listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire at their peak. I'll let you be the judge of that. But overall, not a bad choice. Death Cab for Cutie or a reuniting Buckingham Nicks, the Fleetwood Mac reunion situation. These are very different and very interesting picks. I will say I'm personally not a Death Cab for Cutie fan, but I know that I'm in the minority. And people who love that band ride or die for them. So understandable. The Weeknd at a Weeknd concert. This one would just be like not surprising. There are some answers that I got where it's like, yeah, that is kind of where cheaters would go. And I know people love The Weeknd, but I feel like this is, wouldn't be surprised perhaps. I personally would spice this up and make it not a Weeknd concert, but a Tedros concert. If you remember The Idol on HBO, I feel like that show was so bad. It was bad on a level that like we're not even talking about it. Something is like really bad when there's like no discourse anymore. There wasn't even something like lovable, salvageable about that project. I personally thought some of the music was pretty good, but anyway, I'm rewriting Weekend Concert to Tedros. Carly Rae Jepsen, I did repost this on my story already. I feel like that would perhaps be a twink on twink cheating scandal, but I could be wrong. I don't want to judge, and I'm not in a place to say that. That was just my first thought there. SZA, I love SZA. I support that decision, not the cheating, just the concert. Hannah Montana and Jonas Brothers. That would be fun. Creed, Turnstile, love Turnstile. I don't know why there aren't more bands like Turnstile that are getting like the same amount of exposure. Whatever Turnstile is doing, let's get some more Turnstiles. Hoobastank, if they still exist. Hoobastank was a choice. I feel like The Reason is the perfect song to sing to someone whose life you are actively destroying through cheating. Makes sense to me. This person said justice. People would at least know I have taste. I feel like this is just being French. Like, you're gonna get some cheaters at your justice show in general. Sorry to the French. Claro, there are quite a few write-ins for Yo Gabba Gabba and the Wiggles, which would be crazy to like see a parent like at a show. Like if you're a kid at home watching like a live stream of a Wiggles concert for whatever reason on your iPad, you're an iPad child and you're watching the live stream of a Wiggles concert or Yo Gabba Gabba, and there's your mom or dad with someone you don't know. This has probably happened to at least one person. Arctic Monkeys, that feels like a likely place. A lot of votes for Beyonce. You know, at least you're having a good time. I would want to know what tour specifically, but Cowboy Carter could be a fun time. Sean Paul. There are a couple of votes for Sean Paul and for Shaggy, which totally makes sense. Dave Matthews, this person said, I don't know why, but Dave Matthews Band sounds like the most appropriate answer here. This is honestly probably how, when you think about it, like those Coldplay Cheaters were just two people who happened to get caught. Like, you know, there are a lot of people who were at that show who were like, at least it wasn't me up there. And I think there are certain artists, certain bands, like Dave Matthews Band, where that's probably just happening. They're just not getting caught. But in terms of Dave Matthews Band, if you are, with my limited knowledge, if you are cheating on your significant other, my guess is that everyone knows each other already in a way, and you might have an open relationship. So, Deftones. I am a Deftones girly. I still have not seen them live, but I have always loved them. One Direction. R.I.P. Liam. I never really got the appeal of One Direction. Like, they had some okay songs. Zayn is the only attractive one out of all of them if we're choosing our boy bands based on like who you have a crush on. But the girlies did love One Direction. Lana Del Rey, Jimmy Buffett, R.I.P. Again, that was probably happening all the time at those concerts, and my guess is that A, everyone knew anyway, and B, people were probably cheering them on. So good for them. Billy Joel, Madonna, but circa Confessions on a Dance Floor. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know the Madonna eras. I should probably do my research. But respect. My Chemical Romance, Eminem, Jay-Z, another one that makes sense. Beatles, because people would be focused on John Lennon resurrecting instead. Personally, I would be distracted by George Harrison resurrecting. Also John Lennon. I support that. I have said it on here before. I'm a big Beatles fan, but I know other people don't give a shit about the Beatles. And that's fine. Pitbull. This one I was waiting for, and I posted about it on my story, and it just makes me laugh so much because just imagining like putting those two CEO cheaters at like a Pitbull concert in a Jumbotron, like imagining them with bald caps on, that makes it funny to me. If people are doing things they shouldn't be doing, at least dress up like Pitbull. This person said 9 Inch Nails, and I can imagine that. I am a huge 9 Inch Nails fan. I always feel like I don't like give off like 9 Inch Nails fan energy, but I love Trent Reznor. I have loved 9 Inch Nails for a really long time and would love to see them live. Black Sabbath, R.I.P. Ozzy. I'm surprised I only got one vote for Bad Bunny. At least you're having an amazing time seeing I'm jealous if you're at a Bad Bunny concert. Sexy Red, the 1975. That one doesn't surprise me at all. They Might Be Giants is a crazy answer. I have not thought of They Might Be Giants in so long. I'm going to need to go down a rabbit hole there. If you historically went to a They Might Be Giants concert, and whether you were cheating on your significant other or not, it is time for a retinol serum. Limp Bizkit. Another vote for the Wiggles. Really a mixed bag. And you know what? That's what I like to see. I only saw like 2 Taylor Swift votes in there and a lot of other very exploratory music tastes. So my hope is that none of this becomes reality for you and that you, number one, are not cheating on your significant other to begin with. And then if you are, that is something that you can deal with privately with the people that it actually impacts. And I say these things knowing that, given the nature of our surveillance state today, might not happen. But at least you're at a concert that you love, whether that's Coldplay or not.
Microtrending.
Anyway, I'm sure that I'm going to edit this down, but I'm also pretty sure that this is a longer one. So if you've made it to this point, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for watching, if you're watching either on YouTube or wherever else. Would love to know your thoughts on how you think surveillance is shaping behavior, either dating or otherwise. So feel free to comment wherever you are watching or listening. And as always, you can find me on all platforms at saltlacroix. You can DM me or you can email me at saltlacroix@gmail.com. And yeah, thanks again for listening, and I will see you soon. Bye.
Microtrending.